And a good Friday night, everyone. Thanks for joining for this Tropics After Dark. Of course, we're still tracking Hurricane Elsa out there in the Atlantic, and there's some different things that have happened since the last update at 4 p.m., and I'll get right to it moving forward here. So, some encouraging news, actually, I'll get to with Elsa. How you doing tonight, Gwendolyn? And Phil, good to see y'all on here. Appreciate y'all joining. And Priscilla as well. Thank you for joining. So what we have right now on the satellite picture compared to what we saw earlier is not as impressive currently on satellite. You know, what we're seeing still, even you can see at the beginning of the loop, some of these blacks and whites, indicating some of those colder cloud tops, some stronger thunderstorms. And there's a couple of bubbling up here at the end of the loop as well, showing that it's still trying to maintain itself. Now remember, just like what I mentioned the other night, where these storms that are going fast, I mean, this thing's still moving at like 29 miles per hour, I think. I'll verify that in a second. I think it's 29 miles per hour right now, the forward motion. Let me confirm that before I say that. Yeah. 29 miles per hour currently is the forward motion of it. And, from I think it was yesterday or the day before, it's been going about 25 to 30 miles per hour as far as forward motion goes. And that's fast. And normally the storms don't intensify too much while they're moving that quickly. But it did yesterday to this morning. It went from like 50 miles per hour to, up to 80 or 85, right? So that was pretty rapid, a 40 mile per hour increase approximately. But it has not been able to maintain itself. It kind of leveled out at that 85 and now actually is dropping in intensity. Tonight we're looking at a hurricane of 80 miles per hour. And the motion's west-northwest at 29 miles per hour, and the minimum pressure is 995, so that came up a little bit too. So that's good news, because at least it has leveled off as far as intensity goes, because earlier this morning it looked like, oh no, this thing's going to defy all predictions and, what normally happens, right? A storm that's moving this fast does not normally strengthen that much, and it did, but now it's kind of, leveled itself off. And in case you're wondering, you can go over to, if y'all like Urban Dictionary, there's a definition I put in there years back called the hurricane hangover. And it's kind of the definition of what's happening right now with Elsa. It has to do with a hurricane going through a wild night of intensification and not being able to maintain itself. So if you ever have some time, go over to Urban Dictionary and type in hurricane hangover. That's my definition, because normally these things, when they do rapidly intensify, they're not able to maintain that strength for long, especially when they're moving this quickly. So encouraging tonight that it has weakened a little bit, and we hope that's going to continue to be the case. And I'll show you what's happening now in some of these models. Now there's Elsa out here. No, not there. Let me delete that. Right here. That's where it was last time. And so there's Elsa, of course. And what we have is a mid-sized tropical cyclone. And this is there's a dipping front that's going to help to create that weakness in that high that's going to finally ride around. It's a little bit extended like that. And there's that front. So you're going to have a storm, though. It's going to be moving into, potentially Haiti, maybe Jamaica. But most likely it's going to be moving into portions of Cuba. Now, this is we're looking at this storm right now, and we'll see what happens in the next 24 to 36 hours or so. Thank you for that, Sally. Appreciate that. In the next 24 to 36 hours, it's trying to get its act back together right now. Hopefully it's not able to, and this forward speed, and it's dealing with a little bit of shear down there too. Let's gather ourselves and remember that we're only in July, right? July 1st. We are normally not tracking storms coming from this area until we are into like August and September. Late July, August, and September, we kind of look to the Caribbean. This is still July. Conditions are not perfect out there. There is still some shear out there that it's going to be dealing with, and I think it's doing it right now. The low-level, mid-level centers are kind of not aligned at the moment, so it's not perfect currently. So I hope that this continues to happen as this moves toward the islands, because if it doesn't get its act together soon, when it goes into these islands, that's only going to start disrupting it even more. And let me show you what we're seeing here on the GFS model, because this has changed a little bit. Now remember, the GFS, I mentioned the other night that the European model was well to the east. The GFS was more west of the European model. And I told y'all that I kind of lean more toward the GFS as far as track, the more western track, because remember the Euro had it going east, north of Hispaniola, and then east of Florida altogether, and then really weakening. And I kind of mentioned that one of them would kind of conform to the other. Well, the European model has come about 240 miles west now of where it was about a couple of days ago. So the Euro has conformed toward the GFS. All right. Now, with that said, we kind of put more stock in the GFS now. So pushing that forward now, watch what happens. Now, this is where the storm is currently, and then where it's headed here. Let me delete that from earlier. Watch as we move forward here. Now, this storm, remember, at the start of this, it's about 1,001 millibars. It's a little bit weaker than what it is currently, right? Right now, it's at 995 millibars. But the point is that it's not strengthening as this moves to the northwest. And notice, even as it gets into, we go into Sunday morning now, we're seeing that there's not much strengthening happen here. A little bit down to 996, that's about where it is currently. But at this point, there's a lot of interaction going on with these islands, right? We love to call it the tropical graveyard because when storms go over these islands, they're very mountainous in some spots, and that disrupts the circulation. And so the hope here is that right now the storm is not looking all too impressive on the satellite picture. And let's hope it doesn't get its act back together, because if this is a struggling system already heading into this island area here with Cuba, Jamaica, Hispaniola, even the Cayman Islands there, Cayman Islands looking in better shape right now. You'll still get some tropical storm conditions, I'm sure, but right now it's a little bit better than it was looking a day or so ago. But let's get a weaker storm in here now and really get disrupted, especially when it goes over Cuba here. Notice when it starts interacting here, it really kind of opens itself up for a moment into just an open wave by late Monday night and into Tuesday, and then back into the Gulf. Notice it's struggling. Center somewhere like here, and then a lot of the stuff is over here to the east, and this would be around Tuesday morning. And then it really never gets its act back together according to the GFS model, where it just goes, look how far west it is too, closer to what, like maybe just east of like Panama City area, but only as a tropical storm, which would be great. Look, nobody's getting out of this. We're going to see some impacts along somewhere. But if that would happen, that's not the worst scenario, right? I mean, if it's just a tropical storm, it'll dump some rain, get some winds in there. But if this thing can weaken and the islands can really mess it up a little bit, that would be great for all parties involved here. That is not set in stone yet. We got to wait the next 24 to 30 hours or so and see what happens to the presentation of the storm as it continues to push west. Remember, moving very quickly still. And so we talked the other night about if it's a quicker motion, it's more likely to feel that weakness sooner. And so some of those western tracks toward like Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, those kind of are not in play anymore because it has not slowed down. But with that said, with the quick motion, it is struggling a little bit on satellite tonight, where you do see some deep colors, but they're not around an apparent center of circulation. Like if you were to look at this, you really couldn't pick out where the center is. We're obviously not seeing an eye or anything like that. So encouraging on the satellite tonight, and hopefully that trend does continue. And looking at this map here, you can kind of see that dip in the jet stream here. And here comes Elsa, and it's going to be moving into that because it's going to kind of nudge that high that's over here. And so somewhere it's going to make that north turn, and that remains to be seen exactly where that's actually going to happen. So that is the latest on Hurricane Elsa tonight. How you doing, Patricia? Good to see you on here tonight. Melissa, thanks for joining. Gulf Shores, Lauren, that's a little bit too far to the west. I think you'll be okay over there in Gulf Shores. With Elsa, it looks like it's going to be a little bit east. I think, like I've been mentioned, the farthest west I think will go, I really think would be like maybe Panama City. It's going to be tough to get any more west of that because it's going to be riding along that high. So I've said Florida Panhandle area, especially Panama City east, Big Bend down to Tampa are the areas to really watch this system for. But right now, at least for tonight, remember the tropics can change, but it's a little bit more encouraging news. If we can get this thing staying weak and being a little bit disorganized heading into the island group there, Cuba disrupts the heck out of storms, especially struggling storms. They sometimes never recover as it moves over the island. It's very mountainous. And if it stays over Cuba for a little while, if this is a struggling system that's going to really have trouble once it gets back in the Gulf. It's not going to have much time in the Gulf. And if it's just an open wave or just a very disorganized mess heading back into the Gulf, it's going to have trouble getting back together that quickly. So hopefully that's going to be the case, and we don't see anything funny happen out there. The track, of course, I'll show you the latest cone and this is the latest cone from the National Hurricane Center. Winds are at 80 right now. And the interesting part of this is that the National Hurricane Center, in their intensity forecast, they only bring this thing back up to 85 miles per hour, right? So they're, and that would be around this area here. So they are expecting it to intensify gradually, just slightly. But again, like I mentioned earlier, the intensity forecast is not perfect. Could be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But it's going to be a big time period between now and then into like Sunday evening to see what the condition of the storm is going to be before it starts to hit Cuba. Because if it's a struggling system at that point and just a tropical storm, I think it's going to really do some damage to the storm structure, and we'll have trouble getting back together once it gets into the Gulf. So that's some hope to look at there. But of course, it's something we need to monitor closely, as it continues to push off to the west. So something to keep in mind there. Again, the western side of the cone is close to Panama City here on the west side. And then the eastern side is going to be close to the southeast portion, South Florida down there. And then, of course, the middle is kind of split in the difference, and that would be closer to Tampa around the evening hours on Tuesday. So it does look like there's going to be a Florida thing. I don't want to say it's going to be a Florida storm or hurricane at this point because that remains to be seen. But Florida's obviously going to get some sort of impact from this heading into, probably more like Tuesday morning, afternoon, and heading into the evening hours as this thing swings by. It's going to be a fast mover, though, so it's not just going to sit around and, dump a lot of rain. So it doesn't really look like that we have like a real big flash flooding problem, although with tropical systems you can have those bands that set up and drop a lot of rain in certain areas, but it's not going to be a staller, is what I'm trying to say here. Hurricane hangover sounds like a mixed drink. It's a good point, Brandy. Gwendolyn says, yeah, it'll knock you out, right? All right, let's see here. Thank you for that, Carmen. Appreciate that. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, Rebecca says, holy cow, the stuff behind it, right? I think you're referring to the this image right here, that thing over there by Africa, right? I don't think the National Hurricane Center is tracking that. I might be wrong. Let me check the 5-day graphical forecast. No, they're not tracking anything out there just yet. Maybe it will. Again, though, it's very early in the season to be tracking the Cape Verde, storms coming from over there. So it's something to watch, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's still a long way to go. We'll worry about Elsa right now, and then we'll get to whatever that's going to be. But sometimes it hits that dry air out there, the African dust, and it just kind of fizzles out. It's surprising to actually get one like Elsa here, but the hope is that this is going to deal with some wind shear, in this area. And it's also at that fast forward motion. So it's got a few things working against it, and the hope is that it's going to weaken it a bit, and then once it hits those islands, hopefully it'll knock it out a bit as far as the structure of it, and it'll have trouble doing anything once it gets back to the Gulf. I'm not saying it's what's going to happen, but I'm saying that is a really, I'd say it's 50-50 at this point, a really good scenario, a really good chance that could happen. But it's really going to depend on what happens from right now until we get into like tomorrow night, early Sunday, is how much can this thing recover? Because right now on satellite, it's definitely struggling a bit more than it was earlier today when it intensified into that Category 1 hurricane. So let's see what happens from right now until like Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and see if this thing starts to get its act back together. Because if it doesn't, then it's going into the islands, and it's not going to do anything at that point because it's going to be over that mountainous terrain, and then only a little bit of time left once it gets back to the Gulf. So let's hope for that. Let's see what happens, and hopefully this thing struggles for the rest of the way. I'm not saying I think you need to prepare that it won't, and maybe we will see some sort of strong thing in the Gulf, but I think at this point, you're looking at like a 50-50 thing happening here as far as hurricane in the Gulf or not hurricane. Right now, I would lean not hurricane in the Gulf right now if you ask me, but ask me tomorrow night again. It might be a little different. We'll see what happens. But the trend right now is encouraging as far as intensity goes. So we'll see how that evolves, because that can always things can always happen in the tropics, and things can overachieve very quickly, and you can be humbled very quickly in the tropics when you think something's going to happen, and then it ends up not happening. So people in Florida, especially West Coast over toward Panama City, that whole area, just watch this closely. July 4th, Monday, looking good. Those 2 days are not going to be impacted. We get into Monday night and then going into Tuesday. Then we start to see conditions probably going downhill for some sort of tropical event. Whether it's a storm or hurricane or really just a wave. There's going to be just nasty weather on those days. So keep that in mind. So that's the latest on Hurricane Elsa out there. Again, it is a hurricane at 80 miles per hour. It still makes it one of the bottom Category 1 storms. It's struggling a little bit tonight on satellite. We'll watch if that continues. Very fast forward motion here to the west-northwest currently, and probably dealing with some wind shear. So we'll see how the system maintains itself, and I think that's going to be key to its eventual future once it gets into the Gulf. So that's the latest on Hurricane Elsa. Folks in Florida, certainly prepare for this, over this area and through this, over here. Got to watch this because it could go east, and we could get something. I think if it's maybe a little bit weaker, it opens up to a wave. You're going to get something that kind of meanders in this direction over toward the western side of the cone. So something to keep in mind there. I think maybe if you see a stronger system, you might see something going a little bit more east. But we'll watch for it. We'll see what happens. That's the latest on Elsa. Appreciate y'all for watching. Thanks to the supporters. Thanks for the star senders. Appreciate y'all. Share this video if you think it was useful. And I'll continue to watch the models as we go into the... hey, Crystal. Thanks for joining. As we go into the rest of the overnight hours, I'll check out the overnight model runs, and I'll share on the page if anything is very interesting. If not, you'll see updates tomorrow from the page, and we'll see what Elsa has planned for tomorrow. So everybody have a good rest of your night.